there was a game that happened last night, and that game was against North Carolina. It was in the Dean Dome. For those of you that missed my preview was pretty accurate, right? I thought that this was going to be a super fast paced game. I thought that North Carolina was going to have serious problems down low, just due to their lack of size. Obviously, they were going to have to play through their guards. I guess the place that kind of surprised me is Carolina has so far this season been a pretty good 3-point shooting team. Trimble, Kudo both had done better. Practicing threes over the summer and had much better 3-point shooting percentages. RJ Davis, obviously had been struggling. That kind of came to fruition again. Ian Jackson was kind of their best 3-point shooter. He had a couple of shots, and you can definitely tell that he's a pro. In transition, his body control and such was very, very good. But Alabama really, I don't want to say didn't struggle, but for large stretches of this game did not struggle. There were moments, and Nate talked about it in the post game, that Alabama did struggle a little bit when Carolina did some press, and Aiden Holloway had a couple of uncharacteristic turnovers in the pressure situations, and Nate talked about how that was something that they just needed to clean up. Aiden was really upset with himself about that, but overall, for those of you that read my thread, Aiden was my player to watch for the game. I thought that the speed at which the game was going to be played, I thought his 3-point shooting was going to be better. He shot 5 of 9. The 3-point shooting was there. I didn't expect the turnovers, and for the most part, the turnovers were not happening in transition. It was really just when there were some traps and things in the backcourt that Carolina did, and I think that's what really got Alabama out of sorts. But Carolina couldn't do it too much because as soon as Alabama broke the press, it was a wide open dunk, wide open three. Alabama was just kind of feasting as soon as we broke the press. If they did not get the steal, then Alabama got easy points, right? So North Carolina was trying to do whatever it could to slow down Alabama's offense. And for the most part in this game, Alabama was just an elite offensive team. And Nate talked about it in the post game, but actually Alabama was also an elite defensive team in this game when it came to the half court, right? In transition, Carolina was pretty good. Carolina is known for being a very good team in transition. We talked about the tempos of both Alabama and North Carolina, both teams wanting to get out and run. But Carolina, really scored all of their points in transition. Nate talked about how Alabama was a .6 points per possession in the half court, and that's just like best defense in the country level. For reference, when Ken Palm looks at what defensive stats are, the raw defensive stat currently of the best defensive team in the country, raw stat is UCLA at a 78. So 78 points per possession out of 100. And then the adjusted, based on competition is currently sitting at Duke with about an 89.2, right? So, if you're talking 60 would be like a .6, just absolutely insane numbers, right? So Alabama, by and large, has done a pretty good job. They have not been that elite, right? But there's things that, obviously Alabama will need to clean up as it relates to transition defense. But Nate was overall pleased with it. There are a few people that I think need to be highlighted when we talk about this game. And I think it needs to start with the kind of surprise. And I didn't mention it in the preview of this game. I had heard that this was a possibility and that this was probably happening. But I wanted to just see it happen before it officially, was talked about. And that is Houston Mallette officially has burned his red shirt, and will play for Alabama basketball this season in place of Latrell Wrightsell. Latrell Wrightsell, I mentioned, in the breakdown that I was unsure of Latrell's status. Nate came out and said that he indeed did rupture his Achilles and that Latrell is going to be out for the season. It was also noted that Latrell was having surgery yesterday before the game. And he was having surgery from Norman Waldrop. He's the Alabama basketball team, one of the team surgeons that handles feet and ankles. And so he was going to be doing the surgery. He was expected to make a full recovery, but that Latrell was going to be out for the season. And the question was asked of Nate, has there been thought of burning Houston's red shirt? And there's kind of mixed opinions when it comes to that, because if you're Houston, You're of the mindset, hey, I'm going to lose my last season and I already haven't played 8 games, right? So there is a level of selfishly, and it wouldn't be upset at him, but if it's your final season, do you want to play your final season without even being able to play all the games? Because if you burn your red shirt at this point, you will not play all the games. And the quote by Houston after the game kind of said it best. And Houston said, in today's society, people worry about what's best for me. And he said, in my opinion, what's best for me is what's best for the team. And in my opinion, what's best for the team is that I play. So I'm going to play, right? He goes, in a perfect world, this isn't how I wanted to play my senior season. And he said it in a way of, I wish Latrell was out there, right? I wish this isn't what had to take place, but in this circumstance, I think what's best for me is what's best for the team, and so I'm going to play. And he played just 9 minutes, but he was super productive in those 9 minutes. He got 3 defensive rebounds. He got 2 steals. He had another deflection that led to an offensive rebound, which led to a dunk. He was 2 for 2 from 3. His shot is so pretty. From a set shot, it really feels like he's not going to miss, right? Neither one of them touched the rim. They were just absolutely incredible. When your set feet hit him in the pocket, the shot is really, really good, right? And we knew that out of Houston, right? The questions when it came to Houston Mallette is his ability to play fully in our tempo and with our pace because of the style of system that he had come from, right? For those of you unaware, he came from Pepperdine, which is a place that's much more of a set offense system as compared to Nate's flows and rules-based system, where Nate does run some sets, but most of his offense is based off of principles, not based off of sets, right? So it's just a different style of basketball. And then also the defensive point, right? He is not as good of a defender as some others. And so it was a thought that, hey, because of the competition that we had, because of the depth that we had, we think it makes more sense for you to sit a year and play next season, also with him and Latrell playing much of the same position. However, with Latrell being hurt, obviously the math changes because now we don't have Latrell filling that spot. Do we potentially lose some on the defensive end? Absolutely. Do you lose even maybe a little bit on the offensive end because you have somebody that has not played in the system before? Sure. But Houston is a more than capable shooter. He showed that in this game. He does have the ability to have some defensive prowess, right? He did get 2 steals, so I don't want to say that he has an inability to play defense, right? He can play defense. It's just not his strong suit, right? Whereas I would say Latrell is one of the better lockdown perimeter defenders that Alabama has, right? I do think that when Chris Youngblood comes back, and it sounds like he's going to be back for the Creighton game, that he could fill some of the defensive role that Latrell had. And so it's really the defensive role gets filled by Chris Youngblood. The offensive role gets filled partially by Houston Mallette. But, that's what needs to be said, right? So in my opinion, Houston Mallette will always have praise in my book for doing what was best for the team, for burning the red shirt, for saying, hey, I understand this maybe isn't what I would want to do, but if the best bet for this team to be able to win and be able to achieve our goals for the season is for me to burn it and for me to play, then that's what I'm going to do, right? Really appreciate that. I know the guys appreciate that. There's a level of respect that I'm sure that every guy in that locker room has for him. It was also really cool that there was a video posted on Twitter that the guys were able to FaceTime Trelly after the game, celebrating in the locker room. Was really, really cool to see. The other guy that I want to talk about is Jaron Stevenson, right? Jaron Stevenson ends up finishing with just 6 points, but it wasn't the points really, right? Jaron Stevenson, for all that had been talked about him, people were talking about his 3-point shooting. And I even mentioned it, right? I didn't, when he was not hitting threes, he was almost he was unplayable at the 3, right? Because what we needed him to do, if he wasn't hitting threes at a reasonable rate, we needed to get somebody else that could shoot them in there. However, now that he's making the threes, right, and he hit 2 in this game, it's a situation where he gives you length on the defensive end where you're able to throw a bigger body at a smaller guard, right? Like RJ Davis, you were able to throw a little bit bigger body at him, right? You're in the Rutgers game, we were able to throw a little bit bigger body at Dylan Harper, right? So I thought that Jaron Stevenson has just been incredible. It was really cool to see him play in Chapel Hill. It's much talked about that his mother played at North Carolina. He went to high school in Chapel Hill. The recruiting battle between Nate Oates and Hubert Davis for Jaron Stevenson, a couple of seasons ago, as well as the recruiting battle for Cliff Amore, right? These teams, even not just on the basketball field or basketball court, but also in the recruiting battles, these two teams have been tied together pretty closely over the past few years. A comment that was also made about the 4 matchups that Alabama's had with North Carolina. Oddly enough, Alabama's played Carolina the most of any non-conference team since Nate Oates has gotten there. Funny enough, it has not been any of them scheduled by the university. Right, they were all in preseason tournaments, the Final Four, and now the the Sweet 16, and now the SEC/ACC Challenge. Right, and so that was just really, really cool to see. And I guess the last person I'll mention, and we've talked about him a good bit, but I think it just goes without saying that you have to mention him as an X factor, is LeBaron Philon. Right, we talked about him in the Purdue game, how he had a really big game despite Alabama not playing super well, or not winning that game and having a bit of struggles. But he was somebody that, again, in this game really plays well when the lights are the brightest, right? The thing that really gets me when you look at Philon is how good he is at finishing from 2. When you look at, and somebody asked me to kind of go through the KenPom numbers for Alabama after each game, and I'll talk about him here in a second. But when you look at Alabama's elite shooting percentages, one of the big places that Alabama's elite this season is from 2-point, right? Obviously, part of that's going to be like a Cliff Amore. A lot of his are dunks, or Grant Nelson and Jaron Stevenson. We have some bigger bodies down low. But it's also LeBaron Philon, and that LeBaron Philon has just been absolutely incredible. As I was saying, LeBaron Philon has been absolutely incredible. And when you look at how LeBaron has played in some of the biggest games so far this season, against Purdue on the road in Mackey Arena, Philon goes 4 of 6, 3 of 4 from 3, has 4 offensive rebounds and 4 assists, right? Ends up fouling out of that game, but was a huge piece of what Alabama did in that game. Had 18 points. Like I said, 3 of 4 from 3 was definitely his best shooting night of the year. But, the 4 offensive rebounds and 4 assists, right? What he does in making the offense flow. And in my opinion, also what kind of goes underrated in his game is his defense, right? This is the second game this season that he's had 3 steals. He had 3 steals in his opener against UNC Asheville as well. But this is a guy who, at moments, LeBaron Philon has a motor that just really, really hard to stop. Right, he jumps in passing lanes and he just does a really good job at creating things and creating opportunities for the offense through his defense. The other thing that, again, we were talking about is how good he is at finishing at 2s, right? And we're not talking mid-range. We're talking more floaters and things at the rim. He's a really, really good finisher at the rim. Part of that due to his 6'4", having decent size compared to like a Mark Sears or Naden Holloway. He has a little bit better size going down low. But he's also just a really, really good finisher down low. The only game that he struggled finishing really all season was against Houston, right? That was the one game this season that he did not finish well at the rim. He ended up going 0 of 6, but in every other game, he's really shot over 60% from the rim, and that's just really, really good numbers. And it's part of the reason why when we look at Alabama's KenPom numbers as a team, Alabama currently sits at 9th in 2-point percentage, over 60%, right? Again, a lot of that has to do with a guy like Cliff Amore and a lot of his being dunks. He's shooting over 71% himself. Grant Nelson over 68%. But LeBaron Philon's at 62%, right? This is a guy that has done a really, really good job finishing at the rim and on high attempts, right? Philon's got 53 attempts and finished 33 of them, right? So 62% from the rim is just really, really good, and that's obviously high-efficiency basketball, right? The 62%, equals out to about a 125 points per possession, right? Again, these are the kind of the numbers that Nate's looking at. To be an efficient three-point shooter, you need to be over that 33% at minimum range, because once you're over that 33%, then that puts you at the 1.0. Right? So a 62% guy from the rim, again, that's a 1.25, right? It's a very, very efficient shooter. And that's what Nate's looking for. And that's part of the reason why this offense flows and is as efficient as he is because you have a guy like LeBaron Philon that's able to finish at the rim as efficiently as he is. Again, also able to create on the defensive end with his steals. He creates on the offensive end with his rebounds and his assists, right? LeBaron has just done a lot for Alabama, and it's been huge to have, the freshman step up in the away arenas and in some of the biggest games like he's been able to do, right? So that's been really, really good to see. It's been a great thing to see just LeBaron being able to step into these really hostile environments and away arenas and be able to put the product out on the floor that he's been able to, right? So that's what I wanted to talk about. As I mentioned, there are plenty of other guys in this game that had big games. Mark goes for 20. Alabama ends up with 6 guys in double figures. So a lot of Alabama's team really was very successful in this game. But I thought that the ones I really wanted to mention was Houston Mallette. Obviously, props from me and from the entire Alabama fan base for burning the red shirt and doing what's best for the team. And then LeBaron Philon, I just thought that him going on the road or Jaron Stevenson, obviously him, playing back at his hometown, playing where his mom played college basketball was cool. And then LeBaron Philon going on the road in his second true road environment and getting a big win and playing as well as he did, I thought was just something that definitely needed to be mentioned. So that's what I wanted to talk about for this game. Definitely thought that Alabama played, a very good game. Alabama, has some things to clean up, of course, but Alabama, by and large, was very successful in this game and really was in control the majority of this game, getting up by almost 20. And, just good to come out with a win in North Carolina. Not every team in the state could say that. So really proud of the guys, really proud of what I saw, and we will move on to the next game. So thank you, everybody, for watching. If you do appreciate the basketball content, please subscribe to the channel. There will be more coming out here shortly as more games come up. Obviously, a little bit of a break this week, but more will be coming out here shortly. Follow me over on Twitter if you do appreciate the breakdown threads. I'll try to get those typed up and coming out a little earlier. I've been a little behind with a lot of things going on in the personal life, but I do appreciate y'all following along and subscribing to the channel, and I will catch you in the next episode. Peace.